The flight schedule disruptions at OR Tambo International Airport, where passengers were left stranded yesterday. The Air Traffic and Navigation Service had initially attributed this to staff shortages. It now says the weather is to blame. Let's talk to Head of Corporate Affairs and Communications, Mphilo Dlamini, for the latest. Mphilo, good morning. Thanks for being with us. So staff shortages or weather, which is it?
So much, man. No, there are no contradiction in what we issued yesterday. So what happened yesterday, we did mention that we had what we call human resource constraint, which was a temporary situation that we're experiencing. So the issue of the weather is something that is different in the sense that later in the afternoon yesterday, if you are in Johannesburg, you might have experienced some thunderstorm, especially in the eastern part. So that one also compounded in the issue of the flight disruptions that we experienced. But otherwise, it's not about us now shifting the blame to the weather. No, we were very upfront and we're very open and honest that we had a temporary human resource constraint yesterday morning.
Yeah.
And then it affected our flight operations. But later in the afternoon, we also had a weather situation that made the situation even worse.
And Mphilo, how rude of me. I mean, I just jumped straight in there. I didn't even greet you properly or even wish you well for the year ahead, but I'm doing it now, so at least you have that. Thanks for the clarity on those two aspects. Just talk to us about the planning, though. I mean, we know it's going to be a peak weekend. I myself was traveling this weekend. Fortunately, things went really smoothly, but you did see a lot of people at various airports. What was the issue there related to the HR allocations? Was it just that the expectations were what happened, or the realities exceeded expectations?
It wasn't about that, Iman. It was mostly about, personal circumstances of individuals that made them not to pitch up at work yesterday. Some it was sick out, some it was a situation where they have got personal family emergencies. So those are the issues that actually obtained yesterday morning. So if you are working in an air traffic management space, there are many sections that you actually are working in that particular space. So if a particular section does not have adequate resource in terms of human resource, you find that it affects other operations. For instance, yesterday we had a situation where we didn't have some of our colleagues in what we call area approach section, as well as clearance and delivery sections. So those two sections were affected by this. So we found that it then affected the operation in the sense that we then did what is called tactical measures in terms of delaying the departures, spacing them within a space of about 3 minutes. Then it then created a situation where we had a lot of traffic waiting on the taxiway, unable to fly out of Johannesburg, creating what we call now flight disruption in the country generally, because it has got ripple effect in other airports like your Cape Town. Some of the aircraft needed to go and fetch other passengers from those various airports. So that's what happened yesterday. Otherwise, this is a very busy week, Iman. Like you are mentioning, we are putting and deploying all our resources, making sure that what happened yesterday does not happen again. As we speak this morning, operations are normal. We have resourced all the pools that need to be resourced. We make sure that what we saw yesterday is not happening again. We are also making sure that in terms of demand management, we are on point. So I don't see anything happening like that yesterday. But as you know, aviation are very sensitive operations. We must make sure that you closely monitor and make sure that you evaluate situation hour after an hour to make sure that there are no issues that may happen. So we are closely monitoring the situation.
And, human resources, especially when it comes to air traffic controllers, for example, are more sensitive and perhaps more highly specialized than in other areas of airport operations or even in other sectors themselves, because you're managing human lives, 200 and above in a single carrier oftentimes. And so the need for having the right people at the helm at the right time is incredibly important. Can you give us a sense, Mphilo, of how many people were absent at their posts yesterday? As you say, some were sick, some had family emergencies, and I'll get back to that in just a moment. But how many of that head count, what percentage did it represent of those who weren't where they needed to be?
We are saying this is a highly specialized and regulated environment. So you need to have a particular number. For instance, you find that in each working station, you need maybe, let me make an example, about 4 people that are working in a particular section. There are many sections that are involved in an airspace management or air traffic control management. So you find that about 4 people need to be in each section. I'm making an example. I can have to check the correct numbers. However, if, for instance, the nature of our work is in such a way that at a particular time you then need to do what is called rest, because you must always be sharp, you must always be alert, because it's a highly sensitive and a safe environment that you need to maintain. So if there are no other people that actually are going to relieve you, you have to go and rest. So that is why we then need to actually deploy more resources. Yesterday, add more people, or we have to actually do what is called tactical measures.
Yeah, but that's what I'm asking, Mphilo. Sorry, I just wanted to get the question answered, just so that we understand, what percentage of your people weren't where they needed to be? I mean, how many people stayed away? How many people stayed away?
I think, like, for instance, in each section, I think you will find that we needed about 4, as I've mentioned, but you find that 2 were not available
So
yesterday.
at least 50%. Are you saying at least 50% of your staff that were needed on this busy and critical weekend were not available?
Like I mentioned earlier, the reason they were not available, it was personal emergencies. It was something that was unforeseen.
Yeah, I understand that, Mphilo. I
Yes.
understand, but and that's why I'm saying, and we made the point earlier, this is a sensitive task. It is, as you've just explained, incredibly specialized. You need people there because you're managing really, there could be collisions, in the air. You need to manage how many people are landing, how many people are taking off. And if you're saying to me, that 50% of people who needed to be, whether they're legitimate reasons or not, that is highly concerning. Maybe we can come back to this with you at a later stage. What are the cost implications? I mean, how much, are there any cost implications of these delays of planes which weren't able to take off and land at the appointed time?
Cost of such disruptions, Iman, I will admit they are there. They are sitting in various areas of the operations or of the system. Some of the cost affects the airlines. Some of the cost affect airports managers or airport operators. Some of the costs affect us as ATNS. So the cost in the system, the whole aviation system, as a result of disruptions, they are obviously there. So that is something that the nature of this kind of business actually is aware of. So we, as ATNS, that's why we engage and communicate with our partners, with all the stakeholders, to say this is the situation and this is how we are trying to address them, so that we can be able to provide contingency plans, not from our side only, even from the perspective from our stakeholders and partners. So the costs are definitely there, but I can't quantify them now on air because they sit in various platforms of the system.
All right, we'll definitely have you back for those costs and for whether there will be a verification of those emergencies and sick events amongst those staff who weren't able to make it to work. Head of Corporate Affairs and Communications, Mphilo Dlamini, with details on the return to normal operations